two amazing guys who are the dynamic directing duo of this film. They are the ones who brought Nimona to life on film. Please welcome Quane and Nick Bruno. Finally, last but certainly not least, please welcome the creator of the original graphic novel as well as the producer on the film, ND Stevenson. Okay, here we are. We all flew in from France yesterday. Some of us were flying.
Yes. And it was worth it. Thank you for showing up, everybody.
Thank you for coming. So, you were in France for the Annecy Animation Film Festival. Nimona had its world premiere. Sources say there was a 10-minute standing ovation, possibly 15, possibly 20. The number goes up every time I see it. We are right now at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. How are you guys feeling? Just a question for everyone. How does it feel having this film out in the world?
Well, now that you jinxed it, pretty scared. Now it feels awesome. Listen, and it felt awesome sitting here with you all watching the movie today. You're a great crowd.
Yeah. That's not just the jet lag talking.
There is a little bit, right?
It's like,
No, it's amazing. I mean, you just sat through 14 minutes and 40 seconds of credits. Thank you for that, by the way. But if nothing else, it just tells you how many people put their hearts, souls, passion, blood, sweat, and tears into this movie. So it felt right to make sure we included everybody. So to have that work all out there and up on the screen and have people react the way they're reacting and finally see the movie, it's unbelievable.
We did not have the most direct road to release. So being here is still a little surreal for all of us.
Wait, where are we? I thought we were in France. I believe it's France.
not sure. I'm told we're not allowed to swear. So we know that we're not in France. Yeah.
Can we learn French? Can we learn French? Now.
Don't listen. Don't listen to children in the audience. We're in the guild.
Yeah.
So Nimona had an incredible and really topsy-turvy, some could say roller coaster journey from being a book to becoming the film that you just saw. And I want to take you guys through it a little bit. Let's start right at the beginning. So, ND, can you tell us, you were 19, you started making this story. Can you tell us where Nimona came from, where the story came from, and what sort of inspired you to put this out into the world?
Nimona was a character that started popping up in the pages of my sketchbooks when I was a student in art school. And like a lot of 19-year-olds, it's just it's a transitional time where you're trying to find yourself, figure out who you are, how you fit into the world, and also just flounder and flail around a lot as a human being. And out of that came Nimona, who was this character who was very sure of herself, but also had this ability that I desperately wanted, which was just to be able to like change into absolutely anything that she wanted to be. And so I just started drawing this character, and I feel like she became kind of a cathartic character for, letting out these feelings. I was having all these feelings, I didn't have anywhere to put them. When I could just tell people about them, it didn't seem like it didn't seem like anyone was really understanding it. And I just felt like really lonely at that time. And I was also starting to find a voice in comics as a storyteller. And so I decided that my first comic was going to be featuring this character. The rest of the world, the other characters rose up around her. And it started to turn into this story that's a version of the one you saw, but also, pretty different in some ways. And it was the first time I think that people started to really understand me when I was trying to tell them what I was feeling. And I realized that Nimona, even though she's a very personal character for me, and she represented a lot of sort of like internal pain and fear, I sort of just realized that she was a lot more universal than I realized, and that a lot of people actually related to her. It became a webcomic, comic, and from there it became a graphic novel, and from there it became a movie. And this character that started out very personal started to grow past me, and I realized that a lot of other people really saw themselves in her as well. And so it was really cool to see every single person who took part in the movie having that personal stake in a character that had meant so much for me at a really crucial time.
I love that. And that's a beautiful lead for my next question as we sort
You're
of.
welcome.
Thank you. Nick and Choi, so you came on sort of halfway through the film's development process. I don't know exactly halfway through, but in between the beginning and the end. Coming onto something that was such a personal project and that came from like such a personal place for ND, how did you kind of find yourselves in the story, and how did you sort of, what led you to this project, and how did you kind of like find your way in?
Yeah, we did it.
You did do it. I can confirm that you did it.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Yeah, go
I mean, honestly, we've been finishing our last films, Blast and Skies, and they asked us to come in and sort of just help with the story development process, which is something very common to animation. And I think our sort of outsider perspective, a little bit of distance, that we really saw a story that was a love letter to anybody who was misunderstood or felt different. And that all sort of centered in and around this character Nimona. And I think, and he said it perfectly, like, once you start working with this character and get to understand Nimona, you realize that even though she's so specific in her personality and how she approaches things, her motivations are universal. There's so many people from so many different walks of life, so many different experiences, but they all found something in connection. And really that was the thing that drew us and I think made it easy to connect in a way, even though it was a hard process. It was easy to connect because I think everyone who's been a teenager, everyone who's been in a space where you feel like you wish you could change something about yourself so you fit in easier, or you wouldn't feel so awkward.
Yeah, right. When he says process, he means process. He's Canadian. Yeah, I know it's hard to understand.
He keeps trying to get me kicked out of the country, but
Do you have any thoughts about that? Do you want me to apologize for the
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like a circus. No, but what Troy's saying is right, and what was really profound is one of the particular groups of people whose voices were a little bit more passionate, a little bit more strong about these themes were members of the LGBTQ community. Yeah. And at Blue Sky Studios, who we love very much, Karen here opened up the door for anybody who felt connected to Nimona to come in and tell their stories. And that is what we got in droves, right? Like, you felt people were really, for the first time, feeling like they were able to have a voice, able to speak up and tell their story. And that sort of became the wellspring for our movie. And for us, before we were officially on it, it was very clear to us that, there's a bunch of amazing things to tackle in this graphic novel. And the reels were trying to do so many things because there's so many great things to explore. But that was the one thing that it hadn't really leaned into, was just that idea of Nimona. So for us, in our outside perspective, that seemed easy. It was just like, let's do that. Let's go into that. Let's tell that story.
Not always easy when
There's
certain expectations on how you tell a big budget animated film. But
yeah, in very many ways, the story of Nimona became the story of the making of Nimona. And there were lots of people who were supportive of that, and there were some people who were nervous of that. And you're either on the side of the punks or the side of the Institute, and some people chose one side, some people chose the other. I think you know where that line kind of lands. That's the nicest way I'll say it today. Yeah, I didn't bring up Disney at all.
Did anyone actually believe that we were going to make it through? I didn't.
But I do gotta say something, because over the past couple days, I have given Disney a lot of flack. And to be specific, there are so many, and I'm stealing this from Karen, because Karen always says this really well. We have so many friends and family at Disney. We really do. People who are trying to do the same thing, trying to tell the same stories. At the end of the day, there's a couple chuckle fucks up at the top who are standing in the way of that, right? And I hope this movie shows that we can have a great fucking time, guys. Sorry, kids, I said fuck, chuckle fuck, and shit. I was told not to
That was Thanksgiving dinner.
You might have plushies.
I love the raw Nimona sheet of it. Karen and Julie, can you, so like, there was this studio closure that has sort of like, that like is this like untold story of the movie, and he's like, it's so beautiful that everyone from Blue Sky is credited. Can you tell us a bit more about the process of how did you resurrect this film? How did you do that? What was it like? Tell us a little bit about that.
Hard.
Yes.
It's hard. No, this movie has been through pretty much anything a movie can go through, I think, at this point, and that even before we got to the closure of Blue Sky, which is definitely our biggest challenge, I would say. There was a lot going on. But in a phone call, we pretty much went from a big studio film to an independent movie, like literally in a phone call, and we had to figure out how do we keep this going in that conversation.
We were all used to, and it all had come from and worked in very big, large, vertically integrated studios. And we basically took the movie through a studio merger, a studio closure, a studio acquisition. We didn't even know what turnaround meant, and we did it. Like, we got this movie out and through our partners at Annapurna. Megan Ellison, she picked up this movie and she believed in it. She said she watched the reels and cried 4 times. So we knew we found a partner, but we still had to figure out how to make it. So, you know, normally when you're in a studio, you know where to go, who to call for help. Like, where do you score? Like, oh God. So like, we figured it out and got great support along the way. And we made this movie with great support from Netflix and from Annapurna Pictures. So where there's a will, there's a way.
We like to joke a lot about the Movies That Made Us series, also on Netflix, but Nimona could be more than an episode, an entire season of that.
I'm so glad that you could make it here. It is, I think, in such a weird time in our industry. It is so inspiring to see a film this heartfelt get made and get distributed. I wanted, now that sort of told a little bit of the story of how it was made, I wanted to talk about the art a little bit and the storytelling. ND, when you were first making this webcomic, what were sort of some of your design thoughts with Nimona and design thoughts with the world? And then I'm going to kind of want to hear about how that translated into animation.
Yeah, just because I started doodling in a pink pen, I think Nimona ended up in pink. And I was a broke art student, I didn't have that many pens. But yeah, in a comic, unlike an animation, you can't watch her physically transform from one thing to the other. So the pink color became a way of showing how she, just being able to track her through the page and through the story and knowing where she was at any given time. So you weren't just like, wait, why is there a rhinoceros? Where did that come from? You knew that it was her. And also I think it was really important to me that the very first thing I started drawing was that she was chubby and she was punk and she was gender non-conforming and that she, growing up as a kind of uncomfortably lady-shaped teenager, I really wanted to have a character who was curvy without being sexualized in her body, because that was really especially when it came to superpowered characters, superpowered female characters, that's pretty much all we had. And so it just was really important to me, she's so, she's just so, she chose to look this way. That was really important to me, that she was really proud of how she looked, that this was her ultimate form, that's how we know her. And I found that really healing, just drawing that character and exploring that through the comic. And so that was the thing I think that was really important to me. I just didn't want her to get sanitized, turned into a more generic, more, generically cute, generically pretty Disney princess type character. I wasn't sure how that was going to translate. So it was really cool to see in the process. From my point of view, it was very easy. So I was just great, that was great. And on their side, I found out later, it was not so easy. So,
yes, it was incredibly easy. No, luckily at the studio we had a few more pens, so options of many colors. But I mean, every decision we make visually in animation, which is such an amazing thing about the medium, is it all can come back to theme, characters, the narrative, and the idea that pink became super important in how we're bringing Nimona across. Because I mean, for us, Nimona is such an amazing character. When you're dealing with a female teenage lead character, it's usually a story about who am I, what am I gonna, it's a searching for self, and Nimona comes in, she's incredibly self-assured. She's an incredibly confident character, which is such a breath of fresh air and so amazing to work with. So that pink became a super important rallying cry, right? She's a character who can be anything, and in our world and in the full film, she doesn't have to be pink, but she chooses it because she's proud of who she is. She likes who she is. She just wants to be seen and accepted for who she is. So that pink is kind of a badge of honor. It's a badge of rebellion in a way, when the choices could be endless. And that color pink also started to bleed into the broader film. So upon further viewing, when it comes on Netflix June 30th, you watch how the frame, the lighting, when Nimona's feeling connected, when she's feeling seen, that pink sort of bleeds into the whole frame. Her color fills the film. We use a chromatic aberration, which is like a prismatic break of light. It's almost like a little rainbow hue around the lights when you get lens flares. I mean, it's showing that she feels seen and believed. And when she's feeling distant and separated, we start to pull color out of the world. It's almost like her emotions drive the color of the world. In fact, at her lowest point, which I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody because you all just watched it, we literally go black and white. Like there's zero colors in space within the frame at her worst. So that was something started in the comic that we took and found narrative meaning for throughout the film.
Another thing we stole from the graphic novel.
we didn't steal, we adapted.
We adapted. Was light and shadow. ND did this great thing where a lot of times our heroes were in the shadows, right? People who are not liked, not accepted, were driven into the shadows, and that's something that we really embraced in this movie. I remember when our production designer, Aiden Sakano, said, "Do you think we could do this whole movie where the characters are in shadow the entire time?" And we were like, that sounds like a bad idea. But it's a great idea because you really feel it, how people are celebrated and accepted and how our heroes are not. And you want them to get into that. And that's why I feel like, I hope when you see that scene where little Nimona meets little Glorith and she's in the shadows and she's for the first time invited into the light, how much that means to all of us. And it's really one of the first times we, as the audience, are really in the light as well. And then we go from that right back into the shadows, which is really sad. But that was a thing that I'm really proud of that we held true to throughout the movie.
Yeah, we even took that into the actual character of Nimona. Again, back to the character of Nimona. She became the central figure for this entire film. At her worst, when she's torn apart by her anger, her rage, her frustration, 1,000 years of rejection, Balster's just sort of turned her away like Glorith did before. She turns into this shadow creature, right, which is such an important part of the graphic novel that we loved. This idea that we have all of these different feelings and parts of self that aren't always pretty, but they're just us. So she turns into literal shadow, and when Balster finally says, "I see you, Nimona," and calls her by her name for the first time, which the only time he calls her by her name, Nimona, is at the very end of the film. And he sees her for the first time. Upon further viewing on Netflix,
I couldn't find that out until I was like 17.
yeah, it was very purposeful. He called her kid and you and this girl. He never called her name, which is all she asked for the whole movie until the end. But after that point, she feels so empowered. She actually becomes light itself. So even the character herself is playing with shadow and light. So.
It's so beautiful. I mean, you use the medium of animation in such a gorgeous way. I think one of the most delightful things as a fan of the graphic novel and watching this movie is how Nimona is so adapted. She's so, in the graphic novel, she is everywhere at once, and she is like looking like so many different things. Did you have any sort of principles when it came to storyboarding her and figuring out her acting and kind of figuring out how to translate this? A graphic novel is so fundamentally different from a film. What did you think about?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a lot of that is always have fun, always be unpredictable, right? She'll never walk around a table, she'll walk on on and over a table. She'll jump on a couch. She'll go on the chair the wrong way. Everything is, she's going to do it differently. And then another principle we had is her humor is so important. She talks about a game of murder, let's kill people, let's damage and break things. But all that is a cover for somebody who's really looking for a friend and being a little shocking to, push buttons and see who will be her true kindred spirit. So those are fun things that we're always looking to do. So animators would just go in and they would know instinctively when to make a face at the director. Like, that's not stuff that's directed. Or when to run over the table and say, the camera shouldn't be over here. They're playing the board game. She's just going to run right through that table. So that was a lot of fun surprise that when we developed the character, I think our team was also bringing back so much to the film. And that's a really fun thing to see.
And then, in the comics, she's so amazing. She's a shapeshifter. She can do anything she wants, and I've heard you talk about it, and she'll even break the frame of the comic. Like, nothing can contain her. So we had some rules set up for the shapeshift. Most importantly, her shapeshifting ability isn't a magic that happens to her. It's not like, Cinderella's dress, which a cascade of magic falls down, and then all of a sudden it was just beautiful. But her shapeshifting is, it was so apparent in the comic, is driven by who she is, how she's feeling in that moment, what her instinct is. She's as, we always say she's as fluid as her state of mind. And so it was important when the animators were approaching that those shapeshifts, we always said, like, if you had zero effects work on your shot, you have to believe this transformation. It's driven by what she's feeling in that moment or how she's moving. And that became a really important thing, that her shapeshifting isn't magic, it's just intrinsic to her DNA.
I think that comes across so beautifully. Another weird thing about adapting from a graphic novel is finding voices for characters who previously only speak through text. Karen and Julie, can you speak to the casting? I think Chloe Grace Moretz, Riz Ahmed, Eugene Yang are all so wonderful. What was that process like?
So once we unlocked Nimona and focused the reels about her and everything she brings to the story, casting became pretty easy, I'm going to say.
That's the first time I've heard something that was easy.
I love that one. Yeah.
We're often referred to as easy. So that's for kids, don't.
But we cast the movie based on actors that we knew and liked and who emulated what the characters were. So you guys might have something to say.
No, it was really pretty spectacular casting process.
Canadians.
You've made me so self-conscious.
I really love Canadians, by the way. This is probably not okay.
That happens when you cast someone into the shadows.
But nobody will cast me for it.
He's the worst, eh? But seriously, poser. This is one of the first times when casting, when we went out to our first choices and everybody said yes. And I think anybody who's sat through casting, that's a pretty special thing. But I think that's because we knew the story, we knew who these characters need to be, and we could explain that to the actors. And Chloe just understood the idea of that balance of this big, crazy, chaotic, destructive character who uses her comedy and her energy to actually hide pain and frustration. And we were incredibly amazed how she could just switch gears between those and find that performance. And then Riz came to mind really early on. I think he was our first and only real thoughtful baluster, in the sense that we have a character who struggles with class, who's not seen as being a knight because he's part of the kingdom, but not viewed as being part of that kingdom. And we've seen Riz do this amazing talk to the House of Commons in the UK about visibility and diversity in media, and he speaks to a lot of these things in his music and his acting choices, his role as a producer. So he really, he just knew how to bring that aspect of baluster to the forefront. So, and Eugene is just he's just so much fun. Oh my gosh.
Each one of these characters represents something on, we'll say, the flow chart of acceptance. And Eugene represents that charisma and privilege, right? He comes from a place where he is beloved and he's accepted and he's so out there and confident, and he's got the most amazing hair you've ever seen in your life.
There's a little bit of envy going on.
Yeah, and so it's you just want you want your actors to represent what the actual characters are, so they understand, because it's important for us that their art comes through in their vocal performance.
I want to add something too, and this is something that you guys hopefully can relate to, but Nick and Troy did an amazing job with the voice casting. Not one actor was in the booth together at the same time. Yet there's so much chemistry in here, and sure, it's fine. It's something we've all done before. Scenes are filmed independently. Sometimes, in animation, it's not uncommon to have actors come in separate. But nobody was recorded at the same time, and you would never know that from the performances. They did such an amazing job getting performances out of the cast that it is, I was just so impressed.
All right. Well done. I think we have to run, but I have one very, very quick answer from everyone. Now that the film is out in the world, soft open, June 30th on Netflix, it's officially out. What do you hope that people take away from the film? Just give me a very quick answer.
Going down the line, or
Yeah.
what? Okay, all right. Oh, jeez.
First.
So my first apartment in Los Angeles was overlooking daycare, and so every day around lunch, while I was drawing Nimona, all the kids would flood out into the playground, and Frozen had just come out. And so every day I would hear, without fail, "Let It Go" sung very loudly and off-key, constantly, over and over again, for hours. And like that was like honestly, I was like, I really want to. I want kids to like really like. I want kids to like pretend to be shapeshifters. I want kids to be like pretending to be whales and like honors and stuff. Like I want that same reaction from I want this character to really just like click with people everywhere, but like especially kids, especially my nephew, because his opinion is the most important one to me. So I hope he likes it.
Aww.
Early on, we were working, and he would help us with a lot of writing for Nimona's voice because it was so specific, and we sort of cracked this line, something, 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 we win. And it was just like, oh, this silly little thing she could say because she doesn't have a plan as they're like trying to escape this thing, and it became this really weird rallying cry and just sort of grown in scale for us throughout this
Process.
movie. And I think that, looking back on it now, I kind of love that this idea that I had two teenagers, both my kids were teenagers while we were making this film, and I hope people watch it, especially kids, and say like, it's okay if you're a bit of a mess. It's okay if you don't have the answers right now. It's okay if you're like, I don't know, I'm just gonna keep making this up as I go, because we all kind of do. But just know that at the end of it all, we win. Like you will find a way. You'll be okay. Like you will find people who can help you, who can champion you, who can hopefully ally you, and something. In the end, we win. Or as we learned this week in NC is blah 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 victoire.
Some had French subtitles while we were screening it, and that was like, we're told it's very poetic in French.
Yeah.
And then we're all getting it tattooed.
Absolutely.
Sounds
sophisticated. But
yeah,
anyways.
Troy's getting a show stamp of that. We decided on it already. We all decided, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You heard it
We
first.
already here.
I'm gonna get real serious for a second, which I don't. I'm very uncomfortable getting serious. When we started this movie, we started off trying to make movie about acceptance. Along the way, speaking with everybody, we learned. I hope that we learned what that really means, and the message of the movie went from acceptance to getting to know people. It's just get to know them. You can make up your own opinions about them, but get to know them, because that's all any of us would ever really hope for. That's all we could ask for, and it's not a big ask, but to us, that's really what acceptance is. And I think you see that throughout the movie. And I hope for all those little kids or adults out there, that's all we do when we come up and meet new people. Just get to know them.
Kind of nailed it. What they said.
Yeah, I did.
But as a female who loves movies and just in this industry, Nimona as our main character, having a female lead who is complicated but likes who she is and is uncompromising about that, meant so much to me watching this movie, and I hope that inspires people to be happy and proud that they like themselves, and just don't apologize for that ever. Just be who you are.
Right, so piggybacking off of what Karen said, you know, for all of us I'm sure can relate, but having shifted in your life, it's like, get to know who you are and be okay with that. And not only, you know, getting to know your neighbor and getting to know people, but just like get to know yourself and know and be confident in who you are. And I think that's something that, as a woman, it's really important.
Can I have one more quick thing?
Yeah, first of all.
Very quick.
Really quick. This has been a lot of heady, deep conversation, and it's all right, and that's what we do with it. I also hope people just go and they laugh, and they gasp, and they have fun, and they eat way too much popcorn, and they walk in and they say, that was awesome, and Nimona said this, and Val said that, and when he did the sword, and then she turned into an ostrich, and I hope people have fun, because all this conversation is super important. It really, we do hope that message comes through, but, you know, it's the spoonful of sugar. I'm not going to get into...
I hate Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins. No, he's
not my children.
He doesn't hate her, he's afraid of her.
Is there a difference?
There's a difference. But I hope people have fun. I hope people have fun, because there's a lot of messages like, I hope people have fun.
I love that.